you say, everybody? With Jake Coker, I'm Mick Gillispie. Welcome to Elephant in the Room, part of Roll Tide Pods. Great to always get together and read your comments, and thank you for being part of our show. We got a lot to talk about. Alabama had a huge recruiting weekend in Tuscaloosa, some real top-notch elite players in town, and we're going to kind of focus on a couple of those guys and just the process that it takes to recruit and go through all of this stuff. It's constantly changing. We're going to get into that. Two former Alabama players, Chris Samuels and Mark Ingram, are on the College Football Hall of Fame ballot. How about that? I saw both of those guys. Went to school with Chris Samuels at Alabama. He deserves it. Basketball roster, when you start looking at those guys, it is absolutely slam-packed full of good players. Softball finishes up at the World Series. Bama lays an egg in baseball. All that right here on Elephant in the Room with Jake Coker. Let's get into the football first. The baseball team really just not worth getting into until the end.
Yeah.
Save your opinions on them. No, I'm just kidding. Those guys, there's a lot of growth that needs to happen with baseball. They need to look over at football and see how you win. And you win in recruiting, man. And I got to tell you, like another really big weekend in recruiting is coming up. But this past weekend was the one where you start to really see Alabama stepping up and bringing in these top players.
Yeah, looks like we're really starting to pick up momentum again. I think a lot of the former players coming back, showing their support for Kalen DeBoer and that new staff, has really helped support their growth, especially in the last 6 months since he's been named the head coach. I think Coach Saban's presence there has really helped out a lot as well. That kind of the way that they're transitioning into the new coaching staff. Just all around, really like what they're doing. Got some guys from California, from Mater Dei in this weekend. Got the SMU commit coming in as well. Sounds like a likely flip to Alabama.
Keelan Russell, a Duncanville, Texas guy who is a quarterback of a team that seems to win the state championship a lot. And it seems like,
hey, SMU getting a 4-star quarterback, man. They must be firing up that Pony Express again.
What advice would you give Keelan Russell? He's committed to SMU. He's a winner. I'm sure winning's a big part of what he wants to do. Jake, Alabama, you won a national championship at that position at Alabama. What advice would you give young Keelan as he tries to figure out where he wants to go?
I mean, honestly, in this day and age, what I would be telling him, and I would just say, look, be honest with all these coaches that are recruiting you. I know NIL is a huge aspect in getting you to certain schools now, but you kind of have to manage that with the type of revenue you're looking at, but also the end goal and how you're going to be developed as a player, how you're going to be marketed across the country in order to make more money. Alabama will do that for you. You've got some older guys that are going to be in that locker room. Jalen Milroe, Ty Simpson looks like the 1 and 2 guys, and I would think the younger guys are probably going to look elsewhere here pretty soon if that stays in place with Ty and Jalen. Mainly Ty. Ty sticks around, for a couple of years of eligibility there at the tail end of his college career. You're going to have a lot of young guys leave. So I think that opens up a lot of playing opportunities for Keelan Russell. So to be honest with these coaches, Alabama to me is obviously a much better choice than SMU, and I'm not throwing any shade at SMU, but it is what it is. You get a lot more marketing power through Alabama. You're going to win more games. You get to be a part of that growth that we're going to see with Kalen DeBoer over the next 4 years. It's kind of perfect timing for you. You can kind of bring Alabama back. If you really believe in yourself and you've got the talent to do it, you can be that guy. So a lot of upside to going to Alabama. A lot of eyes are going to be on you. A lot of opportunity to make NIL money. A lot more so. I mean, look, SMU. I know there's a lot of money there. It's going to have to be more internal money, in my opinion, from donors making it happen more so than big national brands. So you got to look at Alabama from a long-term perspective and not just look at short-term money that you're being offered right off the top of the bat.
Does the fact that he's won so much in high school and been on some great teams, around great players, managed to deal with the expectations that they have at a school, like Duncanville in Texas, help him coming to Alabama? Or does that even matter?
I think it helps a lot from just from a confidence, from a experience standpoint. Look, I don't care what level of football you're playing. If you're getting a lot of snaps and live games against whatever competition, you're learning more and more, and you're more comfortable in the pocket back there. So I think him having a lot of experience going in is really going to help him. And I mean, it's the same even at the college level. I just in my personal experience, towards the end of my first year, I felt like a totally different player than I was at the first part of my first year. In the second year, with a year under my belt, I would have loved to have just had that confidence, that experience to move on into a second year and see how that would have turned out.
Right.
I mean, you look at Joe Burrow, the first year he started in college, he looked like you kind of looked at him like, he's solid, but hopefully they got somebody behind him that's going to take over the reins and bring LSU back. And then he gets a second year and he looks like a totally different player. So I experience goes a long way at the quarterback position. I just, the more you feel comfortable in that pocket, the better you're going to play.
Yeah, no doubt. I thought it was cool that, and kind of to talk about, more on the recruiting weekend, that Chuck McDonald and Jordan Davison, both guys come from that Mater Dei school out in California, right? The same one that Bryce Young came from, right? The same one that Damani Jackson and Xavion Brown came from. I mean, there's like this Alabama to, California connection with this high school that had 3 Heisman Trophy winners, which is really amazing. And they both come. Now, Davison's a running back. Our friend Andrew Bone has him as a heavy lean to Ohio State. And then McDonald, I think Alabama's a really good shot at getting McDonald. But how weird is it to have a high school like that that's out in California? I mean, this isn't like Hoover or Prattville or Saraland or St. Paul's, where, this is out in California, and these guys keep coming to Tuscaloosa.
Yeah, I mean, I think they turn out a lot of talent. I think Matt Barkley was a graduate of Mater Dei as well. I know there's been a lot over the years. Maybe Carson Palmer's from Mater Dei as well. I think Mark Sanchez maybe. Anyway, some of these high schools, it's kind of like IMG or other national high schools. You got guys from all over the country. I would imagine Mater Dei's got some guys from all over the country, as well known as they are. To me, it's when you get schools like that, it's not surprising anymore because people flock to those high schools and they get a lot of attention, and you got a lot of opportunity to be seen in the public light. To me, it's kind of like making the comparison between SMU and Alabama. When you're looking for NIL money, you're going to get a lot more exposure at one program rather than the other. So in high school, you're looking for offers. In college now, a lot of these, what tips the scales is the NIL money and the exposure. So, people want to go to that high school because they're going to get offered by the USCs and the Alabamas. And, Coach Saban put us in a position to recruit guys from California and Michigan and all over the country, over the last 10, 15 years. And so it's not surprising to see us. And now we've got Kalen DeBoer, a West Coast guy, used to recruiting that area. Hopefully the emphasis is still the Southeast, but we have a really good shot at getting these West Coast guys due to the new coaching staff's familiarity with the geographical area.
Yeah, Matt Leinart was there 2001.
Yeah,
and won a Heisman. But yeah, it really has become where Alabama can go anywhere in the country and recruit, and then they can get players from the best place. But that what you said makes a lot of sense. Is that in that state and maybe even states surrounding, everyone knows that that's a great place to go learn how to play football. And it almost has become kind of like a football academy because of that, like an IMG, but not really. Like IMG, I know is this Constant Sports, but where if you go there, that you have a chance. It's like Sarah Land, is it? So Sarah High School in the Bay Area, where Barry Bonds and a bunch of other people went. I think Tom Brady went there. There's just certain schools where players kind of want to be around other players.
Well, it's going to a school where that college coaches are going to be eyeing those athletic programs, and so you get a true look or a true chance at getting offered by the schools that you want to attend, because they're there. They're going to see it firsthand, whether they're seeing you or somebody else. They're there evaluating talent. So, when you've got a school where you've got that kind of opportunity, it's kind of hard to say no if you can go play there. I mean, you are going to get as much out of that school as the school's going to get out of you. So, when you've got that kind of support and that kind of push from the coaches and the institution, then it really helps, recruit guys there to come play because they know they're going to get a lot out of it.
Yeah, great point. Well, we'll keep an eye on obviously on the recruiting trail. We said we would talk about it. We will, and it's really exciting to see that Kalen DeBoer almost is motivated to make sure that this program doesn't take a step back. And he was telling recruits, "Hey, Coach Saban's gone, and I'm here, and we love Coach Saban." And there's going to be a difference, right? But winning isn't one of those things. We're still expecting to win championships here. I love hearing him say that and tell recruits that, because I don't think you win championships without saying, hey, that's what our goal is.
Yeah, and you have to look, the goal, I don't think the goal has changed at all. I mean, I believe him 100% when he says that. And whether that's this year or 3 years from now, without setting that goal from the first, it's like when you talk about Mike's perspective on the goal being to win an SEC championship. When you don't set that expectation, you're setting your sights lower than they should be, and you're really not truly believing in yourself if you don't set those goals that high and go in to every workout, every practice with the intention of winning a national championship. You're just not going to reach your full potential. So when you hear a coach say that, whether it's to the media, whether it's to you directly, whether you hear it in the hallway, that's his belief and that's what he expects of you. And anything less is a disappointment.
Yeah. Yep. Well, talking about trying to win championships, Alabama basketball, I guess all the dust is settled. We can take a step back now and start talking about the fact that your light's gone off again. And that this basketball team, man, like looking at it kind of on paper, and I sent you a text today where it just lists like, what the starting five could look like: Sears, Reitzel, Youngblood, Nelson, and Amari, and then having, Holloway, Stevenson, Mallett, Diabate, Reed, Sherrill, Filion, and then Cunningham as your guys that are coming in, all like top prospects. I don't ever remember a time where Alabama basketball 1-13 had this kind of depth, man. Like it's going to be a competition to get on the floor for some of these players, and it's going to be a competition to stay in that starting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, this is where like we talked right before this podcast started. This is where the transfer portal becomes a double-edged sword for players because, I mean, that there's going to be some Alabama guys that do not play as much this year due to the amount of talent that's coming in. Have been saying it for a while. I love Grant Nelson. I love the way he played in the tournament. But if we don't see the Grant Nelson that we saw in the tournament throughout the year, I think he's going to lose some minutes. You've got to this Alabama basketball team needs to be the team that you don't just think about the talent that they have. You're more so apprehensive about facing them because of their physicality.
Yeah. Which is going to be different, which is going to be a big difference from last year when they were so passive on defense.
Well, I make that comparison. This is a football comparison, but it's, again, I've talked about Arkansas through the years on the football field. You could possibly get away with playing mediocre against Arkansas, and you may not have your best game, but man, let me tell you what, if you don't go out there and play physical, you're going to get your ass whipped, and it's not going to be a fun experience. I mean, it's like, if I don't go out there and play hard and physical and keep my head on a swivel, I'm going to get hurt.
Right.
So I mean, that's again, that's my thought when I think of Arkansas, and that's, I think any coach that hears that about the team that they coach, I think they get really excited about the players they have in their locker room because it's a mentality. I mean, look, if Alabama loses games this year in a way that where they're dominant physically and they may just get beat because the other team had a hell of a game from the 3-point line, I mean, you can live with that. When you get dominated inside and they get the 50-50 jump balls or dive balls, hustle points, that's when you have a problem. And so you just want to see a team, and hopefully that's the kind of team we have this year.
Yeah.
Like we saw in the tournament where the 50-50 balls, the hustle stuff, we never lose that. It's all about just, hey, that team played their best game to beat us, and that's how we lost.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I agree.
Which is what they're going to have to get used to because now all of a sudden this Alabama basketball team is the Alabama football team where they're going to be favored. Everybody's going to play their best game, and they're really going to realize what it's like to have the target on your back.
Yeah. No, and that was the next thing I was going to ask you about. This is the first time. Now, Alabama's been good. Don't get me wrong. They've won the SEC a couple times. They won the tournament a couple of times. They have been one of the upper echelon teams in the league. They've been right there with Tennessee, Auburn, and Kentucky. I would say consistently the best four. But now all of a sudden it's different because you went to the Final Four, and you're bringing those players back.
Oh, yeah. Well, there's a difference between the team that's kind of trending up and everybody's like, we're going to put them back in their place. But then there's that team that's undeniably good that everybody wants to make an example out of, and ruin their season. And that's where we're creeping up on that status. And so the target gets much bigger. And people want to beat you that much worse. They want to beat the king. They want to dethrone the king. And look, again, I'm not saying Alabama's the king by any means, but we're getting to that territory with what Nate Oates is building.
Yeah, it's exciting. So, just kind of looking over that roster, how do you think that the minutes are going to end up playing out? How do you manage that? Do you do like waves of guys? Do you try to find the best formula per night that matches the team that you're playing? I mean, Mark Sears is probably the only guy of that group that is going to be on the floor to start every game no matter what, right?
Yeah.
Or am I wrong? Or, there's some other guys in there.
Mark Sears has to be the only fixture on that team this year that plays as many minutes as he can possibly play. I mean, he really came into his own in the latter part in the tournament last year. I mean, he was good all year. Don't get me wrong, but there was a different level of intensity in that tournament, and I think everybody's going to be really excited to have him back. And I think he's going to be the engine that makes Alabama go. I love Latrell Wrightsell. I think he's a great Alabama player, Alabama guy through and through. But there's a lot of talent coming in. I see him losing a lot of minutes. Grant Nelson's another one. He's just going to have to play physical from game one to the end of the season in order to maintain the playing time that he got last year. And then outside of that, it's pretty much a crapshoot, right? We've lost a lot of the guys that were fixtures on that team last year, and the rest are pretty new names. I mean, you got Aiden Holloway out of Auburn. That's interesting in itself. Jaron Stevenson, he's a big body. He's going to, I think, if you've got a mismatch where he can, be around the perimeter and make threes, he's going to play a lot. But again, it all depends on who we're playing, what kind of depth they have in the paint. It's going to be exciting to watch, that's for sure. But there's going to be some mathematical formulas in there with Nate Oates at the helm.
Yeah, and the whole thing is play good defense, attack the basket and shoot threes, right, and be really good at it.
Yeah.
But the defense is the thing that let Alabama down last year. They've addressed that with this roster, and we're going to talk a lot of basketball between now and basketball season, just because you have to. I mean, this is potentially the season that Alabama goes to win a national championship in basketball. They believe they can do it. It's hard to win those, but
yeah, I mean, the team from 2 years ago was in terms of elite talent and a starting five, I think we probably had more 2 years ago, but in terms of depth and overall talent throughout the roster, I don't know. Alabama has never had talent like this. I mean, that's pretty fair to say, in my opinion.
Yeah, top to bottom. All right, let's talk about softball. Get into this. Before I do that, though, I want to remind you guys that we're brought to you by MyBookie. We've all been there before. A weekend trip to the casino canceled because real life came calling. MyBookie's new and improved online casino is here to change the game. Dive into a truly realistic casino experience featuring the latest in slots, progressive jackpots, and live dealer action, all from the comfort of your home. The MyBookie Casino provides a Las Vegas experience when the action is in your hands and you don't even have to wear pants. Start at MyBookie today with a generous sign-up bonus using the promo code NEXTROUND, and you guys know that. And a revamped loyalty program ensures a host of exclusive VIP perks. The more you play, the more you win, only with MyBookie. Well, if you would have bet that Alabama softball would have gotten to the World Series after how bad the regular season was to their standard, you would have probably won some money, because it seemed like they had the odds stacked against them, although they were a 14 seed, which means they did get to host the regional in Tuscaloosa, which honestly I was kind of surprised about it at the time, that they were going to get to host a regional, but they did, and they ran through that, and then they had the epic Game 2 win over the Lady Vols of Tennessee. They beat them. They go to the World Series, and they lose to UCLA. They knock out Duke. They lose to Florida. And I was on with Lee this morning in NSP in Mobile, and he was like, "Hey, is your buddy of mine? We both do Lee's show." But anyways, are you disappointed about the softball season, Jake? And I was like, no. I mean, I'm actually elated. I think it's amazing that they got there, and it really shows what a great job Coach Murphy did coaching them up.
Yeah, I mean, it would have been similar to us, our Alabama basketball losing in the Elite Eight. I mean, we were excited for how deep they got, and nobody expected Alabama softball to get as deep as they got. But the one thing about it was the other team scored more than 3-4 runs, you didn't feel too good about the odds of us winning. And we lost our star pitcher last year to Oklahoma.
Yeah.
And we had some pitchers step up, shut people out and really play well. But it was an exciting team to watch, and they just seemed to find a way to win, kind of the Alabama way. Even if we were outmatched, just had a lot of leadership. Those girls were, they played hard, and you got to be proud of them.
They've got to go back to the drawing board this year, and they've got to be more fundamentally sound. That's just watching the games from the regular season and then how they lost to UCLA in the first game. And it's really, you can't win those tournaments. It's really, really hard to win the World Series by losing game one. The odds are stacked against you, so you got to win game one. Really, you got to win game one and game two, and then everything kind of plays to your advantage in those big tournaments. But Alabama fundamentally has got to improve. Maybe just try to build off of this experience, which, their pitcher Beaver showing that you can go out there and do that against competition when it's the most important competition. It's what you play the whole regular season for. And, and I think they just got to be more consistent, though. Run the bases better, take advantage of opportunities more so. And get back to having a team that's dominant. Now, I didn't feel like, Jake, that they were ever going to win the World Series. I thought that, I think I said it last show, is that it felt like that was the World Series to them. And they've got to get to the part where you're talking about with basketball, where it's like making the World Series isn't what we're trying to do. We're trying to win the national championship. Yeah. And I think those are two different things. Like getting there is one thing, but then going there to win it is another, and they laid the groundwork for that.
Yeah, it's and you hate to say that they did accomplish a lot this year, but you look at Alabama now athletically. We have to be considered probably the best athletic department in the country, right? In terms of softball, baseball made it to a regional, basketball Final Four. We're in a playoff in football. Everybody, when you have that kind of pressure, all these different teams doing well and winning championships or making it there to that final step and getting over barriers that we've never gotten over before. I think there's an expectation that reaches all these different sports. If you're not winning or in that conversation of being one of the best teams in the country, you're falling behind and you're kind of a disappointment. So while you hate to say that, it's kind of a blessing to have that kind of expectation from everybody that, hey, it's a compliment to think you should win everything. And that's where we are with Alabama athletics right now.
Yeah, overall, man, I agree, and I hope that the standard doesn't, you look at the golf team, you look at the best player on the golf team wins in the PGA, which, it's 33 years in between and then goes pro. So that could mess up your team chemistry a little bit. Right. But, I look at everything that is going on and I agree, man. I think that Greg Burns has done a great job. I want to talk about baseball, and I'm going to be honest with you on that. Disappointed, and I'm disappointed with where the program is. I'm disappointed where it's been, ever since Mitch Gaspard left. And remember, Mitch Gaspard got Alabama to a super regional and a game away from winning to get to the World Series. But I don't know that team was going to be there to win the World Series. I feel like it was kind of the same thing I said about softball, where they would have made it. Jim Wells used to have teams that went to win the World Series, and got there to win the World Series. And he did it with, a bad stadium and not a whole lot of support from the athletic department and a bunch of other odds, and was able to win at that level. It can happen at Alabama. but it hasn't happened at Alabama. This tournament, they lost both games in the tournament. They lost the SEC tournament in the first game. You get into the most important games of the season, they're at their worst.
Lost 2 out of 3 to Auburn at the end.
Yeah, the 2 out of 3 to Auburn. Like it almost feels like, and I know this is an issue. I spend my life in baseball, so I mean, it's not like I'm just shooting at the hip here, because baseball's become this travel game. Kind of like we're spending all this money. We're going to give everybody a ring that plays in any of the tournaments.
Real
right.
flashy.
Yeah. Instead of, and the Alabama way, the last time we won was we had guys that weren't afraid to get their uniforms dirty, that would go out there and basically just weren't afraid to punch somebody in the face.
I tell you what bothered me the most, and maybe I was reading it wrong, but just watching them play that last game and drove me crazy. It looked like, a park ball team that, they had their heads down. Things weren't going their way. They looked like they're ready to quit. And that was just me reading body language. But, you didn't feel like this was a team that, had the grit, that didn't care what the score was just going to, bust their ass and do what they could to where people looked at that team and said, man, I at least respect what they're doing out there. To me, it just looked like they were ready to pack it in that last game. They had enough and were ready to move on.
Yeah, I got the same vibe. No, I felt the same way.
Yeah, I mean, I may have been reading that wrong, but I tell you what, just from looking at them, there just seemed to be no energy and not a whole lot of care that they were representing Alabama in a regional.
Yeah, no, I felt the same way, and that's why I'm saying this. They got the new stadium, they got a great locker room, they got all of this stuff, and it's like ever since then, since building the stadium, the program has not been a real contender for an SEC championship, the College World Series, and to win the College World Series. So some things have to happen. They've got to win more in recruiting, and they're going to have to probably get some people to come by with some NIL money. I mean, because LSU is going to spend. I mean, they magically they ended up with Paul Skeens and some other guys that helped them win, and now all of a sudden they're fighting, and they stunk this year and got better as the season went on.
They're playing tonight.
And bust their ass. Yeah, they bust their ass. Like, they're a pain in your ass to play.
Oh, yeah.
And Alabama, you're right. Head down, we're losing again. Like, I'm sick of it. I'm sick of the culture. And they've got to fix it. They've got to get some more guys. They need some more dirtbags out there. They need some more Brett Boyd. Yeah. You remember Brett Boyd? Man, that guy was like, uniform was never clean. Give me some more GW Kellers, guys that can hit. Andy Phillips type guys. Joe Caruso's. Like, I don't see those guys anymore. And maybe you do what Jim Wells did. Get to know the professional scouts and ask them, hey, is there somebody out there that you really like? Instead of looking at all these country club guys that are playing in their tournaments and their parents are paying all this money for them to travel around and they think they've made it. Like, it's embarrassing. Like, yeah. I saw the same thing. And I'm like, you know what? I'm not taking up for them anymore. Like, they haven't contended for a real championship since Jim Wells and then Mitch Gaspard left. So I'm hoping that Rob Vaughn, who I do like, and I think he can do a great job, get some help from maybe some people that have some money, that NIL money, and then go out there and get some guys that maybe are a little bit rougher around the edges. Maybe aren't afraid to go out there and break up a double play or do something. I mean, I don't know. But watching those at bats and watching the way that those games went, watching that Auburn series against the worst Auburn team that we've seen in years, you lose 2 out of 3 to them. It's got to get better. And it's kind of the same way I ride women's basketball. It's like making the tournament once out of every 10 years is not good enough. You got to, and then think about this. And this is the canary in the coal mine moment. Is that now you're adding Oklahoma and Texas, right? So your 7 is now 9. You know what I'm saying? Like, so if Alabama is going to take baseball seriously, they're going to have to do a better job of bringing in players that make a difference.
And here's my my biggest issue with just flat out not being good consistently. Everybody in the SEC can get pretty decent talent. Alabama is one of those teams that should always be able to get decent players. Okay, so it doesn't take all that much. I mean, if you're focused, locked in, and dedicated to working hard and being good, or being the best player you can be, you can consistently win games by just being more fundamentally sound than everybody else out there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to have Barry Bonds and Mark McGwire, hitting in the third and fourth hole, or Randy Johnson pitching to win the majority, maybe not the majority, but a decent amount more than 500. Just doing the little things right. Being disciplined on the base path, putting the ball in the right spot from the mound, just, again, being a fundamentally sound baseball team, you can win in any sport. You can be pretty strong with the talent that you can bring in the SEC. So that consistently bad play, that just screams discipline issues. And look, as a first-year head coach, and I think he has done a pretty good job his first year in there. And I don't think you can ever judge a coach in the first year. You kind of get an idea, a little bit of an idea. But year 3, 4, 5, that's when you really know. But we should be a consistently good team with what we have in terms of resources at Alabama.
Yeah, plus the players in the state too.
What we have, and I'm not saying a ton of NIL money. I just mean facilities, personnel. We should be a pretty decent team, in all sports. That just comes down to the players you bring in, the coaches, the discipline, and the expectation.
Yeah, no, I agree. And the other thing is like withholding the standard. And I'm not
saying undefeated. I'm not saying winning 90%, but I mean being a good, sound team and win right at around a majority of your games. I mean, it'd be in the conversation.
Yeah, I'm with you. It starts with recruiting, and then fundamentals. Pitching and defense is always one. They played. At the beginning of the year, they had such a good start, and the way the season ended, I mean, that ought to be a lot of people ought to have their, be motivated to go out there and do it better, because that was such a letdown. It was a letdown.
It's like I said earlier. I'm okay with, as an Alabama fan, if Alabama loses, I'm okay with it. If you put in the work, you look like an organized team out there, you got a lot of energy,
like softball. You can't, you do nothing but thank them. They killed it at the end. Yeah.
The intensity's there, the work ethic's there, the culture is there. You could tell, that's just what you want to see. Really proud of the way those girls finished up their season.
Yeah. They did it the right way.
But yeah, baseball is just, and look, again, that's that first year in Tuscaloosa. I mean, still a lot of work to do. But the mentality, you could tell the mentality wasn't quite where it needs to be.
Good point. All right, final subject on today's show, Jake. Chris Samuels, big offensive lineman, led Alabama to that improbable not one, but 2 wins in an SEC championship, beating Steve Spurrier in Florida back in the day in 1999, and then had a great career in the NFL with the Skins. And then Mark Ingram was, I felt like, one of the big gets that Nick Saban had in recruiting. And he goes on to run behind the offensive line that featured names like our buddy Mike Johnson out there blocking. And maybe even Baron Huber might have chipped in there from the fullback spot. But that entire team, I love that 09 team. He's our first Heisman Trophy winner. They're on the College Football Hall of Fame ballot. What do you think? Would you vote for these guys?
Oh yeah, I mean,
What if you said no?
problem is, if I was voting, the whole '09 roster would be in there.
That's right. Me too, man.
Reggie Bush have to wait another year.
Yeah. Hey, do you remember how cool it was when that 09 team, like, just going through that for the first time?
Oh yeah, I mean that was the first time that Alabama was good in my life. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, let me say that, and when I could remember things or recall, you know, I was old enough to understand what was going on. That was the first time that you know, they were in contention for a national championship. So
Were you alive? You weren't alive for 99, were you?
I was yes, I was 7 years old, but I still don't. I can't.
So you're always like throwing that young shit at me. Now, see, how'd that feel? How'd you like that? What do you remember about the what do you remember about that team?
The '99 team?
Yeah.
I mean, I really can't even remember much about it outside
Freddie
of.
Millens? Do you remember Freddie Millens?
I remember Freddie. I remember Freddie Millens. I remember I remember watching Tyler Watts and Zal play, but I don't you know, remember specifics of the '99 season. Trying to think. Those two are the first real memory that I have of Alabama quarterbacks was Zal and Zal and Tyler Watts.
I could just see a young Jake Coker in the backyard imitating Tyler Watts when he would do that. Like I still can see it. Like he would act like he was going to run and then do that quick drop, you know, go this way and then drop back and throw the football.
Yeah.
You know, and then Zal would come in and he'd wing it around. Sean Alexander was on that team. That was a fun team.
Chris Samuels was on that team as well, right?
Yeah, Chris Samuels. That's why I brought it up. Yeah, I mean, that was he was Alabama lost to Tom Brady in the
Orange Bowl, right?
On the Orange Bowl, and Chris Samuels was out, and they still did really well offensively, but you could see the impact that it had not having him, you know, and he was I think he won the Outland Award.
Yeah. I love, man. I met Chris Samuels while I was at Alabama. He spent a lot of time around the facility at that period in time, and man, you just talk about a well-spoken, knowledgeable guy. He'd sit in our meetings every now and then, and I really, really liked him a lot. He seemed to be a great family guy, just very, very supportive. However, he could be supportive, appreciative of his career. You know, I mean, one of those guys that he didn't take for granted the success he had, and didn't take for granted the people around him that helped him. Just kind of a guy that if I had a son that had a lot of success and he needed somebody to help him through some situations, I'm not saying I know Chris Samuels, you know, really, really well, but if I had a son that was going through some of the similar things he went through, I'd like to see him get to the other side the way that Chris Samuels has.
Wow, what a huge compliment, you know? Yeah. And then I watched him play football, and then, you know, Mark Ingram was the engine behind that 09 team.
Oh, yeah.
You know, he reminded me of Emmitt Smith, like our own Alabama version of Emmitt Smith.
Yeah, he had that same kind of build and movement.
Yeah, movement, hit the holes the way that he did, went on to have a great NFL career, but he just did us proud. You know, he's on TV now, and he does a great job at that. I love those guys when they come from Alabama and then they get out there and they're in the stage, they're on TV, and they're not contentious. They're just laid back and funny and educate, you know, and then they can talk football. They can educate us on what's happening and not act like they're talking over our heads. You know, like he just seems like a guy you would want to go hang out with. He's accomplished so much in his life and his career, and I think he deserves it. I think they both deserve this, and hopefully, and let me throw it one more time up there, they both get in. But even being nominated for that is absolutely really an honor within itself.
Oh yeah. Well, two guys that deserve it, from their performance on the field, and then the guys they are off the field.
Yeah.
I've met Mark a few times, and he was great. I mean, of course, he was playing in the NFL when I was in college, but so I didn't get to spend a ton of time around him. But I've met him a couple times, and he's always been, a really really nice guy. So you just love to see guys like that get honored for what they've done, their accomplishments, and guys that kind of carry the Alabama banner in a way that everybody can respect.
Yep. Well put. Well put. All right. Well, Roback, promo code Room20. Father's Day is dead ahead. I was picking through Ryback shirts earlier today. I called it Ryback again. Roback shirts earlier today. It's an accent thing, okay? But I'm gonna have a new one here, and I'm using the promo code Room20. I'm just trying to pick which one I want.
I know which one you're going with.
Well, but it didn't have my size. They have my size. That's a layup.
Well, if you stop eating ice cream for lunch, you might be able to fit into a large.
Very funny, pal. Very funny. Very funny. You telling me that making my own Reese's Pieces sundae is a bad thing? I was here waiting. Said 215, 220, 225. Then I get this here. That's my stomach growling. I had to do something fast.
Oh, guy goes
You're
out
right, though.
for 2 weeks and it's completely off the rails.
You're exactly right, though. If I could, I feel like that. Like I walked 5 miles today, and then I just blew it.
Yeah, you ruined that.
You just want me off the XL size so that when we get another box, I'll be like, well, these are all XLs. I guess you get them. Anyway, guys, have a great week. We'll get back with you later on in the week. Promo code Room20 for the Roback stuff. And we'll talk more football and see what's going on. I think there's going to be some stuff come up in recruiting between now and then. Obviously there's always something going on as far as the world of the NCAA and everything else. So we'll be keeping a close eye on that, all that. We'll talk to you later this week. For Jake Coker, I'm Mick Gillispie. Roll Tide.
Roll Tide.